Hi friends! It's Brittany here. Does anyone recognize where I am? I'm in the ASP room. Well, today I have a fun lesson for you. Some of you may remember our lesson with the picture cards about the landforms. So we are going to talk about some of these landforms. I'll show you the card to remind you what it looks like, show you the word, how it's spelled, and then we'll also learn some qualities of that landform and types of locations and environments that we might find it. So to begin, let's begin with the landform where it's super cold all the time. And this is a big piece of land that within the mountain of that land, there's frozen cold ice. Does anyone know what landform I'm speaking of? I'm going to start to show you the picture for it. Do you remember this one? What's it called? Glacier. Glacier. Here's our glacier landform. Glaciers. Very cold places, the tops of mountains. We actually have glaciers on top of Mount Hood and Mount Adams. On Mount Adams, there's a glacier called the White Salmon Glacier. And that glacier is the source of our water for the White Salmon River. The snow melt creates the glacier to melt down and come from the top of the mountain down through the waterways into the path where it becomes the White Salmon River. So that's an example of a local glacier near where we live. The next example, this is also somewhat related to what I just mentioned about the glacier. This is a landform that can grow very, very tall. Very, very tall and may seem like a mountain. But this type of mountain has a very special quality. And that quality is that at certain times, from the center of the earth, rising up through this giant mass, it will erupt with molten hot lava. Does anyone know what this landform is called? Think about it. I'm going to begin to show you the picture. Do you recognize this landform? Volcano. 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 Do we have some volcanoes near where we live? We sure do. Mount Hood and Mount Adams. Both volcanoes. They're actually part of a circuit of volcanoes that runs north to south from Washington, or from Canada even, Washington, Oregon, into California. Volcano. Our next landform, that also is something that occurs near where we live. And this landform occurs when there's a large body of water. And from the land mass, there outstretches a tiny little piece of land coming into the water mass. An example of this is the Hood River Waterfront Park. There's a landmass that stretches out into the Columbia River. Does anyone know what this landform is called? Okay, let's think about it for just a moment more, and I'm going to begin to show you the picture. This is an example. Do you recognize that? This is what we call a spit. 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 Just like the spit down at the Hood River waterfront that comes out into the Columbia River. The next landform also relates to a body of water. This type of body of water can stretch vast distances, and it can grow along the way. It can be really wide at certain times, really narrow in certain places, and it weaves its way through the land. This body of water can connect with other little smaller bodies of water, and this body of water will eventually flow to the ocean. Does anyone know what landform I'm thinking of? I'm going to begin to show you a picture. There's many examples of this around where we live. Who knows what that is called? It's a river. 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 Can you think of an example of a river near where we live? I can think of a couple. If we're thinking about Oregon, maybe we think of the Hood River or the Columbia River, that large river that is the border between Oregon and Washington. And if you're on the Washington side, maybe you were thinking of the White Salmon River or the Wind River near Carson. All right, so our next landform, this occurs in a climate that is a little bit different than where we live. It's a much more dry climate, often hot. And the color of this landform is usually browns and reds. And it can become quite large and stretch very far. In fact, there's a very famous example that I'm thinking of in Arizona. It's called the Grand... Who thinks they know what landform I'm thinking of? Here's a picture. You got it, canyon. Just like the Grand Canyon in Arizona. Canyon. Canyon. Has anyone been to the Grand Canyon? Or maybe another similar canyon? Oftentimes rivers actually flow between canyons, in the middle of a canyon. I haven't been there, but I heard there's a canyon that they call the Grand Canyon of Oregon down in southeastern Oregon along the Owyhee River. Canyon. So another landform that I'm thinking of that is in a similar climate to a canyon, very dry, but this time no trees, no flowers. It's often can be rolling, and the texture of this landform is what makes it very unique. It doesn't have soil. It has something else. It's oftentimes brown, brownish red. Anyone have some ideas? This place is filled with sand. What am I thinking of? Here's a picture. Are you remembering now? That's a desert. Desert. Not really any deserts nearby where we live, but if you go more to the south of the United States, southwest, Arizona, New Mexico, you'll find some deserts there. Oftentimes, cactus are some of the only plants that will grow in a desert. Okay, friends, so let's review the landforms. Who remembers what this is called? Glacier. You got it. Like the White Salmon Glacier. Who remembers what this one's called? Volcano. You guessed it. Just like Mount Hood. Next one. Who remembers what this is called? It's a spit. Just like right down by at the Hood River waterfront. The spit. Does anyone like to walk their dog out there or have a picnic? I do. What do we have next? Who remembers this? Yep, that's a river. Just like the White Salmon River. You could say río is river in Espanol. Next, who recognizes this? What's that called? You got it. That's a canyon. Just like the Grand Canyon in Arizona. And lastly, do you remember our last one that we learned? What is that called? That's a desert. You got it. I could teach you some of these in Spanish. Desert, desierto. Desierto, desierto. Canyon, cañón. Cañón, cañón. River, río. Río, río. Volcano, volcán. Volcán, volcán. All right, friends. Thank you for joining me as we learn about our landforms. Now, place one hand on your shoulder as you start to begin to think about what your next work will be. All right. Enjoy the rest of your day. I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Hasta luego.